Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Dr. Munder. We'll take the second lecture in object-oriented programming. We'll talk about Java tokens and the variables and some of the data types that we can use to in our program. This will cover learning outcome number 2. So the content basically is about Java token operators that we use, what are the data types that we can use in Java, and what do we mean by data types, and explain the naming variables and the rules for naming the variable itself. So first of all, we say Java token. When we say token, it's mean a small piece of element, a small piece of element. So Java separate the program into tokens because the compiler need to compile the program and find the error before he generate the executable or the bytecode file. So these token will be parsed by the compiler to discover the error. Token are there are several type of tokens in Java. You just need to know them as a knowledge. So the comments, we have identifier, we have a keywords, we have separator, we have operator, we have literal, we have white space. Look at them. Let's look at them separately, and we will come back to this diagram to see some examples. So first of all, white space in Java is I'll just put the NetBeans program here so we can see actually what's going on. This is the NetBeans program. All right, I'm just gonna make it smaller so you can see exactly what's going on. All right, this is a project I have created. It's an empty class actually, and I hope you know how to create that class because we learned that in the previous lesson. Now, white space is considered as a token. White space could be just one single white space, or could be a tab like this. It could be a tab, or it could be lines. These lines are considered a white space. Now the compiler will ignore all the spaces. So some people, they do not really consider it as a token in Java, but here we need to consider it as a token. So you can insert many lines and empty lines, and the compiler will ignore all these lines. The second token is called the identifier. Identifier used for the class name, for the method name, and so on, for the variable name. So for example here, this is an identifier for what? For the class name. And this is an identifier for the method name, and this is an identifier for the variable name, say integer x. So x is an identifier what? For the variable name of type integer. So it's just a name. It's like a person has a name. All right, we call it identifier to identify it from the others. All right. Now identifier are very sensitive. For example here, we have x. All right. So if it is different from when you say try to print system did out dot print, for example, print, sorry, this is supposed to be print x like this, that should be fine. Now integer x is supposed to be fine. Now if you should initialize the variable, let's say x equal 5. Now the error will come up when you try to write in a capital letter because it's an error. Now what will tell you that is unknown symbol. Variable x is unknown, cannot find the symbol. Now because Java is what? Is a case sensitive. Means case sensitive here, it means what? It means that capital letter is different from small letter. So we should stick with the x small letter all the time. Literal are variable names. You can say it's a variable names with a value. So we have explained here that we have one literal called x and its value is 6. We can say, for example, string name equal, for example, Munder, and you need to put a semicolon at the end always. So these are called literal. This is the literal, and you give it a name. All right, you give it a name a value. You give it a value. Now the second, we continue the token. So we talk about the white space, talk about the identifier, we talk about the literal. Let's talk about the keywords. All right. The keywords in Java, we have 52 or 50, some say 50, some say 52 keywords. They are listed in the table here. These keywords cannot be used for what? For identifier or for variable name or anything. All right, or anything. Let's go back to the program here. So, for example, I cannot use class as a variable name. So, if I say integer class, that will give me an error because what? Because the class is what? Class is a keyword. I cannot use a class as a variable name. If I change the name to just remove one letter, that should be fine. But also you cannot name the variable public, because public is a keyword here. Static, void, package, all these are a keyword. Integer, float, all these mentioned here in the table, right here in the PowerPoint slide, they are all keyword. You cannot use them to for identifier. Let's talk about comments, all right, which is the comment. Comment is just a way that you can explain things in the program. For example, if this is, for example, let's say this one is SID, I can put a comment here and say that one line single comment, SID is represent student number. So when you come to the program later on, you can say that. You can put them as a single line like this. You can put them as a multiple line. If you want to say in a multiple line, you need to put slash star star and close it with star slash. You can write here anything you want, like for example, you can say this method, for example, calculate the average for diploma student. This is just, and you can continue that, and it is for every college, something like that. All right, so you can add more than one line. You can put the comment in a separate file as well, which is a document file, and then Java will generate actually a document file taking considering all. You can see here the author you can consider as a comment, so you know exactly who wrote the program. For example, you put it as a comment. This is a comment here in the beginning of the program, so you can add comment anywhere in the Java. It's a Java token. Comment will be ignored by the compiler. All right. Separator are symbols used to separate things. For example, we have here, this is a simple separator. All right, let me just close this one. Just give me an error. I will just delete this, put it as SID because we deleted X, so we say SID. Now this is a separator, which is a bracket. All right, this when you put the mouse in it, you can see the close of this one. This is also a separator, and this is the big start of it, and the semicolon is considered as a separator, separate the lines from each other. This is a separator, double quotation, separate the string from the rest of the code. You can use single quotation. Partners also here are a separator. Dot is a separator. So these are simple, separate the token from each others, and used a lot in Java because Java is an object-oriented programming language. The last thing is the operator. You can use them, for example. So if I have integer x and integer y, for example, I'll give them a value 2, and x is for example equal 3. I can use the operator to say, for example, okay, here I'm gonna print what? I'm gonna print x. Okay, okay, and then println x and y. System.out print, this the error is here because you need to end with a semicolon. So if you run the program, that will print to you the value of x, which is basically 3. All right. Now considering that, if you can use also what you can say a print. You see it's a print here 3. I should use print line, so you can see it in separate line. This is it. So to print 3. If I say x plus y, it will print. This is an operator. Use a plus operator. All right. If you run it again, it will be supposed to print 5. All right. Sorry, 7 because I said plus. If I say x plus y, that will print 5. So this is the operator. You can use minus, you can use divide, you can divide them, you can use multiplication, you can also use the mod. All right, this is all the operation I'm just running into you. This is called operator. So it's basically an equation or mathematical or logical equation. If I say greater than, this is a logical one, it's printed true or false, is it? Now it should print true or false because x is greater than y. Okay, so these are operators. Let's so we discussed the white space, we discussed the identifier, we discussed the literal, discussed the keywords, comments, separator, and operator. Let's take an example of the operators category. Now the operator category as a practice, it could be honorary. Why honorary? Honorary, if I say print, for example, plus x. How many variable I used here? I used only one variable. We called honorary. Okay. If I use two variable like y plus x, this is not honorary. Honorary means what? I use any operator with one variable. That means honorary. All right. So x is 3. If you try plus x, that will print 4. You can use the minus minus, you can use the xx, so we use only one variable. All right, one variable with the operator, call it honorary. Logical is either false or true, so I can define the variable like this: boolean x equal true, for example. All right, sorry, let's call it b equal true. All right, so if you try to print b, that will print true. If you try to print b, that will print true. All right. If you try to print the opposite, you can use not. This symbol is actually a not. You see that the apostrophe is actually a not. All right. And if you run it, it will print false because it's the opposite of the value. All right. It's the opposite of the value. You can use the comparison. I already used that. You can use the comparison. The comparison will give you true or false. So I can print x equal to 3. That will print true because x is equal to 3. I can use x is greater than y, for example. Is it greater than y? Yes. Or let's say less than, for example. Less than y. That should print false. So these are called what? The relational or conditional operator. You can use and or. For example, this one print here, and let's take it here because the result will be only true or false. I could say here, for example, this one is equal to x is less than y, and use the and. X is less than y is greater than 1. So the result should be what? Should be false because one of them is false. Alright? So the result should be what? False because one of them is false. If you try to print B here, alright, if you try to print B here, that will give you false. Alright? You can use or. If you use or, if one of them is true, then this symbol is or. This symbol is or. You can find it in the keyboard using the shift with the backslash. That will print true because one of them is true. If you try to use this, the question mark, all right, a question mark, that means print true. or you can say I can use that use the question mark here to print true, and otherwise false. So this is just a condition. If x less than y, it will take b as a true. If it's not, it will take it as a false. It looks complicated for you, but later on you need to use that one. We can use also the increment and decrement operator. So I already use that. You can use, for example, plus x. You can use say like this, for example, x equal x plus equal x. That means 2, for example, x equal x plus 2. This means in a comment mean x equal x plus 2. It can be applied in all the operator. If you say x division by 1, 2, or 1, that means this equation x equal x divided by 1, something like that. So this is the operator. The other arithmetic operation you can use is plus, minus, and so on. So you can say you can use them directly. You can say, for example, integer z equal x plus y, and that should be fine. This is just an equation. All right, I hope you can understand that as I practice that on or demonstrate that on the NetBeans, and you can find all the information in the slide. Now these are examples. Okay, you can copy them and put them in the NetBeans, similar to what I did, and you see practice what's the operator. Okay, we talk about the variables. All right, let's go back to the variables. Let's go back to the program. This is the program. All right, this is the program. How much time do we need to explain that? This is the program. Okay, all these are considered as a variable. All these are considered as what? As a variable. All right, so the variable basically is a container in the memory. All right, the variable is a container in the memory. All right, so I want to show you the memory, for example. Okay, so when you run the program, okay, basically you can see this here. This is different things. All right, it's basically different from what you have, but no, I'll not talk about it now. I'll talk about it. So the variable is just a container that stores the variable for the name in the memory. So this is the memory. Okay, this is the memory. This is our memory. Okay, this is memory. When you say integer x, memory, then when you say integer x, for example, that will book a space in the memory for x, okay, and store. If you say x equal 5, that will put 5 in it. So it's like a container that contain value for the variable. Now when you wanna call the variables, we talk about the data type later on. Here you can say integer x equal 3. Now as I said, variable names rules are very strict. Okay, talk about the names rules. So if I say integer name, that's correct, equal Ali, for example. Let's not give it a value now. Integer name, this is correct. All right, why is not correct? Because name is already mentioned. All right, let's call it, for example, major. All right, major is another name. That's a correct word. All right, but it must start with a letter. If I say sorry, this could be string. It can contain major 1 underscore every, for example. That's fine. It can contain number, contain special character. It can contain at if you want. Okay, that should be a different email. This is for the email, so I don't recommend that you use it. Just use the underscore. But the wrong way, if you say integer 9, for example, we started with number. Okay, that's an error. It will give you this is error. The correct way is to say what? M only. Mark, for example. Alright, integer mark. This is correct. This is not an error. You cannot start with number. You cannot make space. You cannot say, for example, first mark. This is an error. Alright, because you left the space here. Space is not allowed in the variable name. So you have to make sure that no space, either by making this capital, for example, the second letter capital, or you can do just underscore these things. All right, and you can see it's correct now. So the rules for the variables is you can also, as you can see, I can do something else. You may, if I say integer first mark, this is correct, no error, because it's not the same as this one, because this one is capital and this one is a small letter. So they are totally different variables. That's fine. Now, the rules for the variable, I already mentioned that. First of all, you can use letter, number, or $sign or underscore. You cannot start your variable name with a number. This is incorrect. You cannot include space in the variable name. All right, and it's a case sensitive. If you start with capital letter, it is a capital letter. It is incorrect also. The last rule is to name the variable. If I say, for example, float, for example, main, or main is not a reserved word. If I say class, this is error. Why is error? Because the class is a reserved word or the keyword in the language. I cannot use any of the keywords in the naming the variable. So I cannot use a class. This is an error. I cannot use void. I cannot use public, for example. This is an error. Why is that? Any word come with a blue color, it is a reserved word. You cannot use it to name your variable. These are the rules for naming the variable. I already explained how to to identify the variables. So I'll take just one variable and explain that. So you can say, for example, this is string name, like this. You can give it a value here and say Wonder, for example. All right. Or if you don't want to give it a value, for example, if I say integer t, integer m or mark, for example, I can give the mark value after that, saying 20, for example. Okay, you can give it the value, initialize the value directly here, equal 20, or if you don't want it here, you can just make it later on in anywhere in the code. These are how to declare the variable. These are the rules for the declaration of the variable. It's all included in the slide. Have a look at them and see what is missing. And if you have any question, you can ask me. One last thing is that I need to mention, each line ends with a semicolon. If you remove the semicolon, it will give you an error. So you have to put the semicolon. Remember that. Okay? And Java is a case sensitive. All right? Hi, this is declaring the variable. Data type. All right, and we talk about data type. We have two data types in Java. One called primitive data type, which is already defined by the language. You cannot, it's not invented by the user. It's already built in the language, such as integer, double, boolean, character, 8. There are 8 data types. There are 8 data types. There are 8 data types in the program. And we have non-primitive data types such as string, array, and classes. And these are, some of them is already identified by the built-in the system, and others are what are identified by the user. So they are more like a library. They are more like what? Library that you can add to the Java and use anytime. All right. But these are built in. So are built in the language. They are built in the language. All right, we'll take an example. If you identify a data type for a variable, you cannot assign a different value. For example, I say here integer mark. I cannot say 20.5 because 20.5 is not an integer. This will give you what? This will give you an error, as you can see that this is an error. Okay, incompatible data type, because you identify mark as an integer and you inserted 20.5, which is a double number, not a correct number. Or you can say, if you want to say hi, this is incorrect because it's still integer and you put string in it, which is not correct. So the parker or the parser, the compiler, will give you an error in that. Okay, this is somehow for identifying the variable. Java is strongly typed language, so you need to specify the type of the variable. I cannot say integer mark like this without data type. You have to specify the data type. You have to, first of all, you have to specify the data type and so on. All right, primitive data type is always comes in a green, in a blue color. Non-primitive is just a normal. Primitive data type is always comes a small letter at the beginning, but non-primitive type start with what? Capital letter always. This is some of the differences between them. Yeah, this is the data type. Some of the data type that you will be able to use. These are for numbers, all of them for numbers, except this is for boolean. It can take true or false, and this is for character. It takes one single character. These are for numbers, so these two are integer. All of them, these three, these are all integer. Okay, these are integer type, take only integer number. And these two are decimal. Decimal take like 2.5 and with a comma or with a decimal point in it. Okay, so these are the data types. Non-primitive data types are, we call them reference type, such as string, class, queue, stack, and so on. They are library that you use them, and it just a piece added to the language. It's not built in the language. This exercise for you. Specify the correct data type based on the value. So for example, I solved two of them. I have my number is equal to 9. I think I already solved this one because 9 is an integer, so I put the data type is integer. And I solve another one, my bool equal false, because this one is a false. It could be false or true, so the data type is what? Is boolean. Is boolean. Try to identify the data type. Look at the table here and decide what is the best data type for it. String is an interesting non-primitive data type. You can identify string using we already identified string here. For example, string name equal Munder. You can give it a value directly, or you can just not give it a value here. You can give it a value later on. It's similar to the primitive data type. You can just say here, for example, name equal Munder, and that should be fine. You can give it initialize the value directly in the declaration line, or you can give it a value later on anywhere in the code. All right, now this is an example for you, an activity for you. I will solve the first activity and you can solve the next one. So the first one is saying that create or write a program. This program should contain I will create a new program. It's called employee information. So let's create the program. Let's make that screen small. So I'll go file, new project, and I will Java and application, and we'll say next. All right, I will call it employee, and I will say okay, finish. And you can see that it's already created here. I'll just make it longer. So you can see it. It's already created a package called employee, a class called employee, and this is the project right here. We have the project employee, and we have one class, main class inside it called employee. This is the package, and this is the package name here. All right, and this is the main method. So I say that I declare these variables for the class. I can declare the variable here. I will remove the comments from here, so I can declare the variable right here inside the class. Okay, let's declare the variable here. I will say ID, which is an integer for the employee. I will give it a value equal, for example, 1. And this is employee name. The employee name should be string, and first the data type, and then we can employee emb, for example, underscore name equal, for example, Munder. And then we have the salary. The salary should be what? Should be double salary equal, for example, 700.550. This is the double. We have department code, for example. We can say integer dpt code, for example, equal 2. This is just an example. You can save other information like date, which is the data type, but it's capital. Okay, date, let's not look at this because it's non-primitive data type. Let's say, for example, active, called boolean. Boolean, we say active equal true. Okay, these are the employee information. I already assigned a value for each one. Okay, if I did not assign a value here, and for example, let's say remove the these values, assigned values from here, I can come in the code down here. So we have we can write here assign a value inside the main method. We can say salary equal to let's increase the salary. Okay, 800.6 for example. I can say yeah, I can say that what's wrong here, non-static variable. You can say it's public. Yeah, because the variable is I will just declare them inside. So we haven't talked about static methods and non-static method. We'll talk about it later on. I'll just put them right here. So yeah, integer, double, and so on. So I'll just go here and initialize the salary equal look, you have to be careful with the spelling. Okay, salary is equal to 800.7 for example, and well, last one is department code equal to 1, for example. Yeah, we finish assigning the variable. If you want to print them, you have to use what? System dot out dot println. I'll use println so everyone is on a separate line. This is a println here, a string. For example, let's say employee name comma, and then space, and then here we use a plus, and we mention the variable name emb name. In the same way, I can use as well copy that and use it. I like to copy and paste. You can start writing by yourself. Employee, for example, salary, and we print here salary, and we have misspelling. We also have control V, employee name is correct or something wrong. EMP name, not employee, EMP. We have misspelling. You see, the compiler will give you an error. So emp here we can print the department code. So here is employee department, and the last one, let's print, for example, okay, let's print something about status, employee status, and we can use the one we learned before. We can say that active equal true, then print what? Print for example, okay, print 1. Otherwise print what? Print 0. Or we can, let's try to print string here. We can print inactive or off vacation. If it's active equal true, then he is working. Okay, otherwise he will be vacation, on vacation, on vacation, for example. Yes, yeah, something like that. So we have to print let, we have to put this like this, think, and like this. All right, so yeah. Okay, let's try to run the program, for example, and see how is it, there's no error in it or not. This is the first program. Run the program. Okay, here we go, the output. You can see that the output is here. Print named employee is the value inserted in it, the salary. Now the status is true, so it's print what? Working. If they put the status false, then that will print false. Actually, it will be on vacation based on this condition. We use the question mark logical operator. Now try to this is for the first activity. I would like you to try and do the second activity by yourself, and also there's another activity by for the operators, which is try to do some calculation. Try to do that and see. If you have a problem, you can contact me. We explain Java token, we describe Java data types, primitive and non-primitive, and we demonstrate some of the programs and statement on declaring variables, and we'll also mention some of the rules that you should consider when you name your variables. I hope that enough for you. If you have any question, please contact me.